First of all, we want to say thank
Good
you.
evening.
Good evening, and thank you for your time. We're here just to get a little bit of historical presence of your time in Omega, if you will.
Well, we're talking about a unique period from 1949 till now.
Right.
Okay.
And you just received your 75th, correct?
No, 70th.
70th.
I went in to Omega in 1949, and this is 2019. 70 years.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Well deserved. Well deserved. Okay. First question that we want to ask and start off with is what attracted you to Omega?
Oh, well, I've been leaning to Omega for a long time prior to knowing what Omega really was. One of the founders, Professor Coleman, lived right around the corner from us. So he and my grandfather went to high school together. And I knew him and his family before I knew what Omega was. But my grandfather didn't go to college. He was in their high school graduating class. He'd gone to high school with them, Old M Street High. And if you go to Washington, D.C. now, Old M Street High is now the Terrell Junior High School building. Still same place right on M Street in Northwest Washington. Anyway, they knew him in high school. And he was a shoemaker. And they maintained their friendship with him and used his services while they were doing their Omega things. So that's how I first knew about Omega, and I knew Professor Coleman and didn't know what he did. I just knew him as a neighbor.
Mm-hmm.
I later met Dr. Love and Reverend Love and Dr. Cooper. And Dr. Cooper was in that high school class too.
This added to your personal connection with the founders. At what age were you working in the shoe shop with your grandfather?
Oh, I was 10 or 11 years old. I was fascinated with the brush machine. I loved to brush the shoes, hold the shoes under the brushes and make them shine. And my grandfather let me do that. But the founders and my grandfather are over at their table talking, and you don't get in your grandfather's conversation.
Right,
so
absolutely.
I'm not making they were my buddies. I knew them.
Mm-hmm.
They knew me, but that was where it was. Your neighbor's grandson, you don't have much conversation with him.
Okay. As much as possible, going back to 1949, tell us about your pledge process.
About the what?
Your pledge process in 1949.
You mean that horrible time I went through?
Yes.
Oh, that. Well, we were inducted into what they called their Lampados Club, which was the pledge club, and there were a group of Omega brothers. Of course, we called them our big brothers. There was a group of them that probably numbered, I don't know, but I've come to find out that it must have been about at least 20 of them, almost a minimum of 20. But they controlled our every movement. Once we joined the Lampados Club, going through our school systems, every time we appeared on campus, we had to be dressed, either suit or sport coat, but shirt and tie. And it had to be fastened. We were quite fastidious in those days, and we thought we captured the ladies' attention when we came out, because the other fraternities were not dressed like us. In 1949 was, I think, the second or third year that we began to carry the gold bricks. It was a new situation for us to carry and protect the gold bricks. Now, the brothers were not allowed to strong arm and take a brick from us. but if they got one, they'd give you a star. And that star symbolically meant you had to pay it back one night during your inauguration. And so we guarded the bricks quite zealously. Yeah, we wouldn't let anybody come too close to a brick. We didn't just set one down and tie our shoe. Mm-hmm. Tuck it under your chin, put it in your shirt, whatever. But whatever you did, you wouldn't let one lay around unprotected. But that was, and we were required to sing. The 40s was the time of doo-wop. And not every Omega that was recruited had a voice. Some just couldn't sing, and some could. Those that could tried to pair off. The problem with pairing off is, in the 40s, when you went through your probationary period, you had a time where you had to go to school. You went to class during that period. Mm-hmm. Had to go together. You had to have a route, and you would let one pledgee off as you went through your route till the last pledgee got to class. Then they would wait till that last pledgee at the end of class came back that same way and picked everybody up to go to the next classes. So we were always rushing, and there were always Omegas in our way, trying to make us later. But we had learned, we had to do a close-knit march where the bricks and books were in here, and that other arm was round the waist of the person in front of us. So you didn't break our line. If you did, we'd get a star.
The consequences.
But you didn't break our line.
I don't know if it was stated earlier, but which college university did you attend, and what was the chapter's name?
Well, I first went in 1946. I went to Bluefield State College in Bluefield, West Virginia, on a football scholarship. I was there 1 year, and that year I went through the Lampotters Club. My mother got sick, and I had to go to another school closer to D.C. I didn't want to go to Howard, so I picked Morgan. And I got a lucky break. They let me continue my football scholarship there, so I could go to school. Anyway, I transferred to Morgan, and I went to Morgan in 48. And the next semester was 49 is when I went over into Omega.
Is it safe to say that the gentlemen that you were on the Lampotters Club with, as well as the Brothers of Omega, were student leaders on the campus or held positions in the community, different things of that nature?
My answer's not very complicated. I didn't know. I knew as a freshman the Omegas, because they occupied my entire living, breathing section, except for while I was on the football team, and most of them were Omegas. The guys I was with had no future. They had just gotten there with me.
Right.
I thought all of them were outstanding and pretty bright guys. And the Omegas, the big brothers, impressed me as to their stature. That's part of the reason that I really got fascinated and looked at the Omegas as the place I wanted to go anyway. So that intrigued me. I had looked up to them because they were all dressy and they carried themselves well. And that impressed me. But at that time, the only thing I knew about Omega was I had heard my grandfather and his friends talking about Omega, but I didn't know anything about it. at 10, 11, I just remembered hearing the word Omega. Mm-hmm. And I didn't know what that was. But I was impressed. And let me be very honest. Most of the guys on the football team were Omegas. And you develop a blood bond with the guys you fight with every day, with and for. Mm-hmm. So that impressed me. And I was one of them already as a football player. And they were the dominant fraternity on the football field. So they sort of hinted that I was supposed to be a Q.
In an indirect way.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Now, you stated earlier as a youth, you remember the founders coming around to your grandfather's shop and interacting with him because they were close-knit friends. But after becoming an Omega, do you have a recollection of the founders interacting with the brothers? And if so, what was that like?
Well, when I graduated and I went over to Morgan, I graduated from Morgan and returned to Washington, D.C., where I joined Alpha Chapter. And we had just purchased the international headquarters building, and it needed work. Mm-hmm. The newest rookie Qs and everybody that was young, well, everybody did help. But we did a lot of the grunt work, and we were very instrumental in helping to build the international headquarters building and taking care of the building itself. Then later on, we purchased a building just off of 16th and Varnum, and that became our frat building. Mm-hmm. We basically held our meetings there. We had a bar downstairs in the basement, and you could purchase a locker where you could keep your own personal individual liquor bottles. And we had a bartender, and we had a caretaker that lived upstairs on the 3rd floor. We had meetings on the 2nd and 3rd floor in rooms, food. We had a kitchen, and it was decorated. And we got to the point where we held our regular fraternity meetings there. The basement wouldn't hold everybody, so we put speakers on the 1st and 2nd floor. And if you didn't get downstairs, you could hear what was going on by just having a seat anywhere in the house. And that house is still being used today.
Wow, still in use.
Mm-hmm. Now, I don't know if that spoke to all of your questions.
I think that covered quite a bit of it, yeah.
I have a tendency to ramble, because if I can't remember it, I just forget it.
Well, that's what we're here, just to get it down and get it recorded, your experiences.
But while we were in D.C., in Alpha Chapter, we had nights come through that Dr. Drew, Brother Hastings. And I'm not going to try to name all the names because I'd leave some out and offend people. But they set sort of an example of the kind of guys that should come into Omega. See, Omega is not going to be strengthened by numbers, but by the quality of people that we bring in to join us in brotherhood. And that's what they stressed. They talked about having doctors, lawyers, the big Indian chiefs, running through the hall. People who knew how to make decisions, who could make the best generic decisions to keep the fraternity going and make it prosper. So that in those days, we had just I was born in 29, the middle of the Depression. And black folks had nothing. If you had something, it was because of luck or the Lord just put you somewhere to let you grow. Mm-hmm. But black folks struggled. We had the lowest jobs, the lowest pay grade, the lowest scales, the lowest everything. white supremacy was at its supreme height. Black folks were next under the dog when it came to respect from white people. The whole idea that the founders talked about was uplifting the race, but especially the black male. Finding him a way to get him a job so he can take care of his family. We live, and let's go back a little bit, because in 49 and 50, the Korean War was imminent. We were taking care of people whose husbands, fathers had been drafted. And they weren't sending much money back home. Little if any. Black people as a whole were struggling, especially those whose husbands, fathers, brothers were in the service. We did the best we could to help out in black folks getting over, getting up, getting to things. That was what they talked about. They would come to a meeting of any chapter and ask, how are you doing for the people? What have you done lately? And then guys would sit up and they would tell how on their job, the job they were in, they got 3 guys hired last week. And they took them into a well-paying job or paying job. We really beat up the post office and the printing office, and I'm talking Washington, D.C., but this was being done in all of the chapters that were around. Now, there weren't any in the big white schools. There were only in a few black schools. They only had about 5 or 10 when I first got in there. But we had to work hard to see what we could do to help. We could go to your house and fix your plumbing. We go to your house and put the door up, put a window pane in or close it off. We could do the regular, house things to fix. But we got a lot of flack from the unions. And our only explanation was they couldn't pay for you to do it anyway. They don't have the money to pay you, so you're not coming. And rather than keep it like that, we'll go fix it. We don't have a license, but we'll fix it. And they sort of backed off a little bit. But we did a lot of painting, cleaning, stopping up toilets, taking toilets out. Where a toilet just wouldn't work, where there's no more water coming into that house, you can't have an open toilet sitting there because gas comes up. Mm-hmm. We would go close those off. We did everything that we heard about. And we were hearing about them through the churches, through civic people, and just neighbors would come in and tell us about, I know a family whose toilet's broken. That meant to us that there's sewer gas coming up. We'd send some guys that know about how to plug them, and they'd go all up and knock on the door. Said, "Ma'am, we're Omegas. Can we come in and fix your toilet?" You know what our answer is. Yeah, come fix my toilet. She didn't care if we were the devil's brigade. Come, fix the toilet. But we were Omegas going to do that. And we had a social director, not for dances, not for our social affair thing, but to take care of the people type. To find out, people would call in, we'd give out his phone number. And he would take the message and then call us and get some guys together. He'd pick the guys that could do the window panes, the doorways, the locks, whatever. And he'd call whoever was on that list for that commodity and say, "Hey, I got a problem. Can you make it on Saturday morning or Thursday night?" And we'd get together and go. And we'd go fix and say good night. And almost all of the ladies would have coffee or soda or something for us. We never accepted alcohol. That if we had taken a sip of alcohol, Reverend Love would personally have taken his Bible and whipped us to death with it. Yeah, And they were going around to the few chapters that they were and telling what Alpha chapter had started doing. And they began to do it. North Carolina, Virginia, Philadelphia. They began to go out to help the black folks in the neighborhood make their houses, their environment more livable, safe for them to raise kids in.
It's very interesting that you touched on that because we've had pioneers such as Roy Wilkins, Malcolm S. Dobson, and Brother William E. Barr who took their time and money to go out and be on the front lines during the 30s and 40s when it was a time for social change in America for our people. So my question would be, what role did Omega play in the revitalization or just the black struggle during that time?
Well, let me tell you, we were always active with the NAACP. That was the big black organization in those days. And we not only had a financial obligation to them, we all joined and made sure we had life memberships among the members of Omega Psi Phi. We were at Selma. We did the sit-in in Washington. We were all over, Omegas, and we were prominent. The founders were there. Dr. Cooper, Dr. Cooper was a little guy, you know, and he wasn't very strong. And they didn't ask him to do a whole lot of working and lifting and marching and yelling, but he was always on the periphery. He was there, you know, you couldn't leave him out. But we did a lot of stuff. We needed a muscle or two.
Understand.
And Prof. Coleman and Reverend Love. And Love was almost my size. He was about 6'2", you know. And very impressive preacher. And he was a wonderful preacher. He preached like T.D. Jakes does.
Wow.
Put his pulpit and the Bible up there, and he walked around the front of the church preaching.
Okay.
And, the man talked to you. He talked to you. But we had a lot of interaction in the good days of some of the people who have since then fallen into disrepute. Bill Cosby did a lot of good during his day. Jesse Jackson has always been there. Dr. Drew was involved a lot in experiments that he couldn't leave the laboratories for I guess months. We saw very little of him when I first got there. When he got a little older, we'd see more of him. And Brother Hastings, when he went down to be the governor in the islands, you know, we sort of lost track of him because he didn't come back much. But we had enough people who had judicial robes on. They were big-time attorneys, doctors, engineers, musicians. Mm-hmm. We had people who really gave rise to the name of Omega Psi Phi and made us proud to be part of it. It brings me to another section. I've been in here 70 years. I don't know when they started putting collars around the guy's neck or who started it. I don't know. I don't know who started the image of a dog being associated with Omega. And I asked one of our leaders, Joseph Williams, who was our district rep, if he knew anything about that. And he said, no, he didn't know anything about the dogs, but he knew when the sign came about and what it meant. And I didn't. So he told me that in order to eliminate that dog image. They got the image of an eagle. And that's what that sign meant. Let's fly above the land. And as we go, let's bring our brothers with us. That's a lot different than raising your leg and sticking your tongue out. I actually pushed a guy over one day who lifted up his leg. And good thing I was old and the brothers wouldn't let that young boy get up and do nothing rash. He was upset until I explained it to him, why I did it. I'm against two things. Don't dog Omega. And for God's sakes, don't hit nobody with a stick. Kaitar in Alpha Chapter will tell you about me and folks and sticks. I take sticks. Well, I used to. I'm 90 years old almost now. I don't take sticks. I'll ask you for it. Mm-hmm. But I used to take it and threaten to stick it in hidden places. Because I don't think you can beat a man across his tail and make him love you as a brother. Not even in the morning. Next week, next month, next year, he's not going to love you. As a matter of fact, and I know, Brother Williams, forgive me. There's a brother at Howard University who was a student at Howard University whose father was a Q. And he followed his father into Omegadom. Went through the initiation at Alpha Chapter. Not Pi Chapter, the noted Bloody Pi. Alpha Chapter. The boy got infected. The skin around his tail was infected. He almost died. They grafted skin from the front of his thighs to his buttocks. And it was touch and go for a long time. Now they took it from the front because he's had enough trouble sitting down with the rest of it. Right. That young man and his father moved to Houston, Texas. And my wife went to school with his mother. We're still friends today. I still see him when we go to Texas. But I don't take nothing Omega. I take my chain off, leave that here. The ring stays here. Everything Omega about me stays here when I go to Houston. And I do not say the word Omega or mention anything about it. And I will stay at their house. But that's one family that has a definite hatred of Omega because of somebody's want of hitting you with a stick just because they got hit with a stick. And let me go one step further. There was a situation in the olden days where Omegas from other schools knew when your initiation was about to start, and they knew that turnback night was usually Friday night. And they'd come to visit your campus with all of their sticks on Friday night and establish themselves as Omegas and proceed to beat every tail in sight. They'd even hit an Omega if he looked like he didn't know what was going on. And we called them outlaws. They were referred to as rovers. And they would just rove from turnback night to turnback night just for the pleasure of whipping people. Those are not the kind of people that we envisioned or the founders envisioned being a part of this organization. Sadistically whipping people until they bleed is something that's just categorically to be outlawed. You don't do that. And like I say, I'll still take a stick and depend on you young guys to protect me when I take that stick. But I don't think we need to go into that and dogism. Mm-hmm. As long as I breathe in and out and I'm a part of this organization, you will hear me speak out. Well, there's a third one. There's a lack of integrity among some of our grand leaders who self-appropriated some funds they didn't have any business taking, or using funds to pay for their trips to various places that they should have paid for themselves and have not paid it back. And I've got enough old friends in this organization. I know the names. My attitude is pay the money back or go to jail. Sure. And I'm being lenient. You pay the money that you took, that you misappropriated, put it back in the treasury, and then go on about your business. Otherwise, we have enough funds to bring attorneys to bear, and I want to do it before the statute of limitations tolls, and we can't do it. Put the money back. How could you steal from us? And that's stealing. They knew it was wrong when they did it. Now that I've gotten all of the bad part out of my heart, and I will probably be castigated for it, so be it. What else would you like to know about?
I'll combine my last two questions into one. What is your visual outlook for the future of Omega, and what advice would you give to current brothers and those that may be interested in seeking Omega?
The future. I have enough faith in the basic makeup of this organization. The brothers that I know and have known, that I believe have faith that this organization is really going to rise above it. Then mine is not the only voice that's saying, you know your brother out in the street. And before he comes to be an Omega man, just because he's your buddy, see what you owe to the fraternity in terms of providing for its future with the kind of person that you would like to be in to run Omega, and whether your buddy is qualified. Take a good, strong look before you say anything. If you never say anything, he'll never get the opportunity. But don't take him in just because he's your running buddy. Might mean that you shouldn't have got in. You know, like follows like. And the saying is that the motor of Omega is the men that run it. And if you got the right kind of men, you'll run it in the right direction. And you pick the guys that like to be dogs, like to look like a dog, act like a dog. Frankly, anything you read in any one of the books, you got a college PhD, you've got a bishop, you got people in this organization that the lawyers would do no harm, and the doctors, I hope, will do no harm. But you've got medical doctors, you've got philanthropists, you've got all of the basic occupations that you can think of in Omega today. And because you're a plumber does not mean you don't have the integrity or the ability to be one of the most outstanding Omegas there ever was. I know a lot of them, a lot of guys. I know some guys that really are Omegas that did not graduate. Things happened before they graduated. They could no longer. Like my grandfather never went to college. He was in the same class with Coleman, Love, and I'm old.
Yes. Cooper.
Coleman, Love, and Cooper. You know, all four of them were in class together. And they talked about Omega with my grandfather. But through sake of fate, he unfortunately had an occurrence and he could not go to college. He had to go to work. He could never become an Omega. But he worked with and for those three people who were in his class. And had they figured out a way they could have got him in college, they would have done it. But instead, he was one of the people that fixed shoes for kids and families in Washington, D.C. And he did that till he died. So, you know, it's not the level that you've attained, it's who you are that makes you an Omega. You know, I'm not the guy that didn't finish college, but's an Omega, that has joined every committee, went through most of the offices, and had a big say-so in helping out his chapter, just as welcome as any attorney that's walked through here. And I've known some attorneys that walked in and stayed a hot minute, put the sign on their card that they're Omegas and never came back. We don't need men who are not going to use their talents to come into this organization and help unify the fraternity and provide scholarship, uplift, we need people who can adhere to the tenets of this organization. We need people who are committed and will work. We don't need the guys that are just meeting types. If you can't get on a committee, I'm not sure we need you. You can't lead. We want people who will step up and face up. If there's something going wrong today, we've got a unique situation in the leadership of this country, and the top leader has exhibited some signs of racism in his makeup. We've got to deal with that. You have no other choice but to deal with it. And as far as black men are concerned, we still have a long way to go. And unless we are the kind who can persevere against the unique kind of racism that we still face, we can still uplift the race as we go along. Other people or other families that are having a hard time, and a brother that we've sworn to clothe if he needs it, to pick him up if he needs it. Find out how we can get him educated to do the kinds of things that he knows, and keep at it. If we can't get people like that, we don't need them. And I don't care if it's your brother, your uncle, your cousin, or whoever it is, or my uncle, brother, cousin. If I don't think that you have what it takes, I think it takes to be a good Omega, I'm not going to talk to you about the craft. I'm not going to discuss with you the things that we do. I might invite you to a dance or to a picnic or something, sell you a ticket, but I'm not going to invite you into the brotherhood. I think it takes a unique person to say, I don't know you. I've never met you until I saw you in this meeting the other night. But if you go through all these tests, I'll be your brother. And if you need me, I'm going to stand beside you, and I'm going to help you do everything I can to make it. And I don't know what making it is, but it means you're going to be a doctor or lawyer or plumber, an electrician, to help you keep your family together, if that's what it takes. If you can't eat, I'm going to find some food for you. I'm not going to be the judge of where the limitation is of how you would be of help. But if you have the propensity to come in here and work hard and complete the things that we do, we have things that we do regularly to help, to assist, to bring to being things that will benefit the race. And we've got white guys in Omega. Yes. We had one in Kaitaw. And I liked him. He's moved to another city now, but, he'll represent us well because they picked well when they took him. I have nothing against white people. I hate racists. Mm-hmm. And I will work hard against racists and to keep my people safe from racists. And I swore to that when I took the oath of Omega. Think about it. And I'm going to keep up my end of the bargain. I'm aiming to get on that Smucker's label.
The 100.
400 years old.
There you go.
I'm booking on that.
Yeah.
You know, I'm booking on putting this wrist back together and getting back to that 14 handicap I had before I had to stop playing golf. And even do a little bowling again. I intend to live the next 10, 15 years and watch Omega. I will be an Omega till the day I die.
Well said.
Thank you.
And on behalf of all the brothers of Omega Psi Phi fraternity all over the world, I just want to personally thank you for being that inspiration and bridge builder that we all need and deserve.
Thank you.